Hello, welcome to Lesson 8.1A. I've entitled this video, The Missouri Compromise. This video is going to cover pages 479 to 482. Here is a political cartoon on compromise. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to take a look at it. I really enjoy this. I think it does a great job of explaining what compromise actually is. Conflicts and compromises. In 1819, there were 11 free states in the North and 11 slave states in the South. The North and South had different economies, political views, and ideas about slavery. These differences created a growing sectionalism. Sectionalism is a rivalry or tension that develops between people who are loyal to their section or region of the country. This era of sectionalism lasted from the 1810s to the 1860s. As a result of sectionalism, there were many political conflicts over issues important to each region. So now we can answer a couple of questions. Question 1. In 1819, what was the balance between the number of free states and slave states? Well, there were 11 free and 11 slave, so nice and balanced. Question 2. What three things led to a growing sectionalism between the North and South? Well, the three things were they had different economies, they had different political views, and they had different ideas about slavery. Number 3, define sectionalism. Sectionalism is a rivalry or tension that develops between people who are loyal to their section or region of the country. Clearly, in this time period that we're talking about, the sectionalism was deep between the North and the South. The Missouri Compromise. Before 1819, the equal number of slave and free states balanced the sectional divide. In that year, however, Missouri applied to join the Union as a slave state. Immediately, a crisis erupted. Missouri's admission would give the South a majority in the Senate. Determined not to lose power, Northerners opposed letting Missouri enter as a slave state. And as you can see, we start out with the 13 original colonies, and those became the 13 states, and then we had Vermont added, and then Kentucky, and then Tennessee. And notice there was a balance between free and slave. Then we added Ohio, but that was balanced by Louisiana, and then we had Indiana, balanced by Mississippi, and then we had Illinois, woohoo, go Illinois, and that was balanced by Alabama. So at that point, there was a nice equal number of slave and free states, which kept a balance. Question number 4. Why were Northerners upset when Missouri wanted to join the country in 1819? Well, they were afraid that this was going to upset the balance of free and slave. There would be one more slave than free, and that did not make them very happy. The argument lasted many months. During the long debate, Maine had also applied for statehood. Finally, Senator Henry Clay, there he is again, suggested admitting Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state. His plan, the Missouri Compromise, kept the number of slave and free states equal. Under the provisions of the Missouri Compromise, Congress drew an imaginary line extending the southern border of Missouri at latitude 3630 north. Slavery was permitted in the part of the Louisiana Purchase south of that line. It was banned north of the line. The only exception was Missouri itself. So as you can see on this map, here is that imaginary line. Everything south in the Louisiana Purchase would be slave, and everything north of this line would be free, with the exception of Missouri. Now notice that gives a little bit to each side. So the North gets a little bit and the South gets a little bit. That's why it's called a compromise. So question 5, the Missouri Compromise added Maine as a free state, it added Missouri as a slave state, and it drew an imaginary line, and it said everything north of that line would be free, everything south of that line would be slave, with the exception of Missouri, that would be a slave state. Question number 6. Which candidate from our election of 1824 proposed the Missouri Compromise? Good old Henry Clay. Question 7. Describe how the Missouri Compromise imaginary slave line was drawn to deal with the slavery issue. Well, I already talked about that, but the line was drawn right here using that line of latitude, and everything north would be free, everything south would be slave, except for Missouri, which would be slave. How did Western expansion increase tension? The Missouri Compromise applied only to the Louisiana Purchase. By 1846, however, there were rumblings of a war with Mexico, which we've already studied, and the United States expected to gain vast new lands. Once again, the question of slavery in the territories arose. The Wilmot Proviso divides Congress. Many Northerners feared that the South would extend slavery into the West. Congressman David Wilmot of Pennsylvania called for a law to ban slavery in any territories won from Mexico. Southern leaders angrily opposed this Wilmot proviso. They said that Congress had no right to ban slavery in the West. The House passed the Wilmot proviso in 1846, but the Senate defeated it. So question number 8. Why did the possibility of a war with Mexico in the 1840s cause some tension over the issue of slavery? Well, if you remember that the Missouri Compromise only said that the line would only extend to the Louisiana Purchase. If you notice, that's this piece of land, but that still left a lot of land here that if a war with Mexico occurred, a lot of that land would be south of that line or wasn't even involved with the Missouri Compromise line to begin with. It was only extended to Louisiana Purchase land. So Northerners were definitely afraid this was going to give the South more power. Question 9. What was the purpose of the Wilmot Proviso? The purpose was to keep slavery out of the West. It was to try to make sure that Southern states didn't get a benefit from these new lands that we might win from Mexico if there was a war with Mexico, which, as you know, there was. Question number 10. Why does it make sense that the Wilmot Proviso would pass in the House of Representatives but would be defeated in the Senate? That's not in the textbook, so let me go over why. Our House of Representatives is based on population. In the North, there were more people than there was in the South. Therefore, there were more Northerners in the House of Representatives, so it would pass. But in the South, because we had an equal number of slave and free states, every state gets 2 senators. Well, if you have a 50-50 split, a bill can't pass. And so it failed in the Senate where there was equal power between the North and South. However, in the House of Representatives, because that's based on population, the North had a clear advantage there. So it passed there, but it didn't in the Senate. Opposing views. As the debate over slavery heated up, people took sides. Abolitionists believed slavery was morally wrong and wanted it banned throughout the country. Southern slaveholders thought that slavery should be allowed in any territory. They also demanded that enslaved African Americans who escaped to the North be returned to them. Even white Southerners who did not own enslaved African Americans generally agreed with these ideas. Between these two extremes, some moderates argued that the Missouri Compromise line should be extended west all the way to the Pacific. Any new state north of the line would be a free state. Any new state south of the line could allow slavery. Other moderates felt that slavery should be allowed where it existed, but it should not be expanded to new territories. Still, others supported the idea of popular sovereignty, or the right of people to create their government. Under popular sovereignty, voters in a territory would decide for themselves whether or not to allow slavery. So there were definitely a lot of views over what to do with slavery at that time. Question 11. What stance did Northern abolitionists take over slavery? That slavery should be banned throughout the whole country. Question 12. What stance did Southern slaveholders take? They believed that slavery should be allowed in any territory. Question 13. What stance did moderates who believed in the Missouri Compromise line take over the issue of slavery? They believed that the Missouri Compromise line should just keep on going all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Any state north of it would be free, any state south of it would be slave. Question 14. What was another stance that other moderates took over the issue of slavery? Other moderates felt that slavery should be only allowed where it currently was, but it shouldn't spread anywhere new. Question 15. And yet there was another idea on slavery, and that is popular sovereignty. The definition of popular sovereignty is the right of people to create their government. And question 16, what stance did popular sovereignty moderates take over the issue of slavery? They believed that when a territory became a state, the people of that state would make a decision and they would vote on it. What's more democratic than that in America? Voting on an issue, and so they would let that state decide if they should have slavery or not. The Free Soil Party opposes slavery in the West. By 1848, many Northern Democrats and Whigs opposed the spread of slavery. However, with the presidential election ahead, leaders of both parties refused to take a stand for fear of losing Southern votes. Some also feared that the slavery issue would split the nation. In 1848, anti-slavery members of both parties met in Buffalo, New York. There, they founded the Free Soil Party. The party's main goal was to keep slavery out of the Western territories. Only a few Free Soilers were abolitionists who wanted to end slavery in the South. Question number 17. Even though many Northern Democrats and Whigs opposed slavery, what were the two main reasons why they did not want to take a stand on the issue of slavery during the election of 1848? Number one, they were afraid of losing Southern votes, and number two, they were afraid if they pushed this issue much more, that the slavery issue might actually split the country apart, and we might have a civil war. Question number 18. What type of people created the Free Soil Party in 1848? People that were anti-slavery members of both the Democratic Party, especially in the North, and Whigs. They left those two parties and made their own party called the Free Soil Party. 19. What was the main goal of the Free Soil Party? To keep slavery out of the Western territories. In the 1848 presidential campaign, Free Soilers named former President Martin Van Buren as their candidate. Democrats chose Lewis Cass of Michigan. The Whigs selected Zachary Taylor, a hero of the 1848 Mexican-American War. For the first time, slavery was an important election issue. Van Buren called for a ban on slavery in the Mexican Cession, the land ceded by Mexico after the 1848 war. Cass supported popular sovereignty. Taylor did not speak on the issue, but he was a slave owner from Louisiana, so many Southern voters assumed that he supported slavery. Zachary Taylor won the election. Still, Van Buren took 10% of the popular vote, and 13 other Free Soil candidates won seats in Congress. The Free Soil Party's success showed that slavery had become a national issue. So question number 20, who were the three candidates in the election of 1848? What party did they represent, and what was their stance on the slavery issue? Well, let's start with the first candidate. That would be the Free Soil Party, and they were led by former President Martin Van Buren. And as a Free Soiler, his belief was keep slavery out of the Western territories. Then you had the Democrat Lewis Cass from Michigan. Lewis Cass supported popular sovereignty. And then the third candidate would be the Whig Party, and that was led by Zachary Taylor. Now, Zachary Taylor didn't say anything about the slavery issue, but because he was a slave owner from Louisiana, it was sort of expected and implied that he was a supporter of slavery, since he was from the South and a slave owner himself. Question 21. What was the outcome of the presidential election of 1848? Well, Zachary Taylor was the winner. As we see here in this electoral map, you can see that Zachary Taylor was a winner with 163 electoral votes. Notice his popular vote was 47.3 compared to 42.5, so it was a fairly close election. And if you look at the states won, notice Taylor took 15 and Cass took 15. So clearly the country was divided over the slavery issue. Well, thank you very much for watching. Before we go, I have this about compromise. Fine, we'll compromise. I'll get my way, and you'll find a way to be okay with that. Thank you, and have a nice day.